taking the request to do it. And by the way, the request was fulfilled because of the fans. If the fans had not have said yes, and there would have been more no's, you would not be on my podcast right now. But a lot of people were on your side, and that surprises the hell out of me, Chaz, because it seems like you've got a lot of negativists. You got a lot of people that hate you, but you've got also silent partners that enjoy your work also.
Oh, there's a ton of people who are silent endorsers of things I say. There's some huge names in motorsports I would love to say endorse me, but or at least support what I say. It's just that they see the heat that I get. They see the negativity from people that I get, and they necessarily can't have that when they're trying to bring in sponsorship dollars. And I do have, just general fans as well. I noticed that a lot going to California. I noticed that a lot going to Pennsylvania here, even in Florida. A lot of people wanting to, take pictures, autographs, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's interesting to see, a lot of people, I try to tell people about the psychology. That's kind of what marketing is psychology at the end of the day. And the psychology of the comment sections in Facebook is the only people who go into the comment sections are going there to complain. You don't really go onto a video, and if you like it, go in there and comment and say, I like this video. Only time you really comment on a video is when you disagree with whatever the video is. So,
Chaz, I can agree with you on that. We live in a world today where if, you say one wrong thing or you say something somebody doesn't like, people become unglued. I've done it myself. I'm guilty of it. I think everybody else in God's green earth is guilty of it. But let's talk about Chaz Thompson. I've done a little bit of recon on you. My friend Kate Dillon calls it not stalking, not social media stalking, but recon. You were, raised in Texas, you're into racing. You were, a lot of people at one time said you were one hell of a track announcer, and then you flipped the script and everything's changed. What made Chaz Thompson become and I mean this with no disrespect, the narcissist of the motorsports industry, especially in dirt track racing today?
Well, really, it came down to a certain situation there at the racetrack when I was announcing and doing a little bit more than announcing. Most people, they only see what you do on Saturday or something like that. But, doing the promotional, helping with the promotional side, pretty much kind of running social media marketing. And then there came a point where the track owner died, and it came and he was the main promoter, and the heirs to the throne were going to be taken over, and I was going to have to, get in there and do a lot of work to help them out as well. It was kind of a win-lose situation, make it work or it's not going to work type of deal. And basically, a lot of things that the promoter said to me, he built these stands because he needed them, not because he wanted them, kind of rung in my head, and I started trying to figure out when did this, and I would drive the thousands of miles, and every time I went out, I would try to talk about the track to regular people, and just people were oblivious to the sport. And really, I was trying to figure out how we went from an age that most people knew about it to an age where it's a ghost pretty much to the general population. You don't really hear about all the big names. You hear Doug Wolfgang talk about how he used to be known, made a lot of money. And nowadays, Donnie Schatz, you'd be lucky to find somebody who knows what you're talking about when you go out there and talk to regular people, the regular world, not at the racetracks, but the regular world, the majority, the actual population that's going to pay these bills, raise these purses, and make these tracks money. So they just don't have no idea. And basically, I started researching the sport to where prior to the NASCAR surge, and I really didn't have nothing against NASCAR. My favorite driver was Jeff Gordon, and the other one in the current times would have probably been a Kyle Larson, we were kind of buddies at the time somewhat. And really, when I researched the history of the sport, I saw once again, the psychology, the marketing of how NASCAR did some things and how the motorsports world overall was a little bit more healthier back when multiple forms of motorsports were represented. Off-road truck racers were a big deal. Evan Evans. Road racing was a big deal. Tommy Kendall, sprint car racing was a big deal. Kinzer, Swindell, Wolfgang, IndyCar racing, NASCAR racing had their Earnhardt. It was all kind of equally phased out. And I pretty much marked it down to a little pop culture era there in the early 90s that kind of shifted everything towards NASCAR. Also, you had some issues there with Formula One and the kart divisions, where, in my opinion, Formula One was threatened on a global scale, and kind of worked together with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to split up the IndyCar series to keep kart at bay and help also NASCAR rise, because a person out of the country couldn't relate to a cup car like they were starting to relate to a kart IndyCar style vehicle.
Okay.
So,
okay.
That is where I started seeing how the dirt track world was basically kind of hoodwinked with watching sprint car racers in cup cars. Prior to the Jeff Gordon effect, I call it, you had guys like Ken Schrader and stuff like that do it. And Ken Schrader was really good, but he really didn't bring the fame that Jeff Gordon did. He didn't take the fame away from a Kinzer or Swindell to the dirt track community like a Jeff Gordon did. And now you have the after effects, the predecessors of those people. You talk to most dirt track people, I watch NASCAR because of Stenhouse or Larson or Bell. Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about, and it wasn't that big of a deal, but we've been raised 30 years later now, and we're into a generation that has no idea about these other times, about the Steve Kinzer winning $50,000 at Eldora, when Dale Senior's winning 47 at Talladega. They don't have any other idea. It's now straight up a stepping stone division, not only in attention but pay as well. So, and that's a big deal. So that's where I got to where I am today, researching the sport, understanding the history, seeing the shifts, seeing the patterns, seeing the companies. You had a big petrochemical war between DuPont and PPG. Of course, PPG was the title sponsor of CART. DuPont was the one that slapped on the side of Hendrick. And you also had the movie just a few years earlier that was completely funded by Hendrick about a California sprint car driver versus a man in black. You just so happened to get it in real life with a Hendrick race car driver, and that was Jeff Gordon 4 years later with Jeff Gordon and a California sprint car driver versus Dale Senior. So It was a really good marketing strategy. It worked out a lot.
Right. Okay.
And I just think that I'm not necessarily saying NASCAR meant to destroy the racing world, but overall they ultimately are, because they're the public representation.
But you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question. The question that I asked you is what made Chaz Thompson snap. You can talk about NASCAR, you can talk about blah, 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 you can talk about these drivers. We're going to talk about that. I want to find out why you pick on my friends like Amber Balkin or Carson Elledge or Kyle Larson. People, because I announce with NASCAR too, but I used to be a nobody in this sport too, but you pay your dues. You work your way up the ladder. So my question to you, Chaz, is this. I want to pick your dirt track state of mind. I want to get inside the dirt brain of Chaz Thompson. What made you snap and become somewhat of now one of the most hated people on social media?
Well, as far as Amber Balkin, do you want to talk about topics?
No. We've got an hour and a half, 2 hours, so we'll hash it out. I want to know what made Chaz Thompson snap. What made him become such a narcissist of not only the NASCAR community, but drivers, dirt track racing, bashing sanctioning bodies, bashing certain people of sanctioning bodies. What made you become the way that you are today? That's what I would love to know, my friend. Go ahead.
I think any time that I'm actually talking about a sanctioning body or a certain driver, I'm also defending the other drivers and the other sanctions that may be doing things a little bit differently. You may see it as narcissists and just attacking them, but it's also defending everyone else who isn't those few select people or organizations. So it's not necessarily bashing a certain person. For instance, like the Amber Balkin deal. Originally, I wanted to defend her until I went into digging into her history and seeing her performances, and then seeing her actual mind state on why she thinks she deserves certain things, just because she's not a white guy from Texas. But anyway, besides that, there's a lot of defense in a lot of the things that I say as well, like Carson Elledge. There's plenty of women drivers who deserve Carson Elledge attention or opportunity, and there's plenty of drivers who aren't women, who are just straight white guys who deserve the same opportunity as well. So it's just a lot of elitist situations, a lot of things where people are getting what they don't truly deserve. And when I point them out, it's not necessarily hating on them. It's more so defending everyone else who aren't them.
Okay. So my question is this. Then what if you go about your approach differently? Because the way that you do it makes it seem like you hate these drivers, that you're picking on these drivers, that you're a feminist, that you're against females being in the sport, or you're against certain drivers being in the sport. Hell, I didn't care for Danica Patrick. I met her several times. I thought she had a bad attitude. She's no longer in NASCAR. But with that being said, that's the first time I ever came out publicly and said this on my podcast, but there were reasons why. But I didn't publicly go on to a broadcast or a race event and say, man, that Danica Patrick, she's a bitch, and, you don't really need to associate with her, and she's bad people. I didn't do that until I'm talking to you right now. What I'm trying to say is, what if you change the way that you approach these drivers, or what you think about them, or what they're doing, and you might maybe get some more attention out of it positively instead of negative?
Well, it depends on what positive and negative is to you. To you, it's negative. To some people, it's positive. To some people, it's funny. To some people, it's serious. To some people, it's finally somebody saying what everyone else is thinking. There's a ton of things, especially with the Carson Elledge situation. I can't tell you how many high-profile drivers messaged me and said thank you for saying that.
Okay, so what is it about? All right, so my question to you about Carson Elledge. Again, we got an hour and a half to hash this out. We're on the air with Chaz Thompson. Hang on. We're on the air with Chaz Thompson, Dirt Track State of Mind. This is the Great Motorsports Debate. Fox Sports Radio, Community Radio Network, iHeartRadio, Tuned In Radio, iTunes Radio, and Tuned In. Again, we are chatting with Chaz Thompson. Chaz, of course, you can follow him at Dirt Track State of Mind on social media, also Facebook at Chaz Thompson. My question again is this, and we're going to go back to this subject with Carson Elledge. We're going to wrap things up here in about 8 minutes, and then we got to take a radio timeout. We got to thank our sponsors, allaboutwraps.net and crateinsider.com. And I know that you're, obviously got to have sponsors, and we'll talk about that here in a bit, because you kind of feel that the sponsors has hurt the game of motorsports, but we have to have them to keep the industry going in a certain aspect. But my question to you, since you brought up Carson Elledge, a friend of mine, I've known Carson Elledge in the industry. The first time she ever raced, okay? Mini Outlaws, go-karts, Millbridge Speedway, Salisbury, North Carolina. I was one of the announcers, and I interviewed that young lady down trackside. So why does it matter if she's kin to this native or that native that's got money, and they try to help her get up the ladder? Why is that a bad thing? Let me ask you a question, Chaz. Obviously, I don't think you have kids. I have a son. Don't you think that I would do everything in my power in me to make sure my son has the best of the best in life? Don't you think every parent in this entire world wants their child to have the best of the best in life? Now, I want you to think about that, and then I want to hear your answer.
Of course. Completely. And like I said, I think what you do and a lot of people do is they listen to one or two sound bites and they judge the whole thing. They don't listen to anything else. Like the feminist statement's hilarious. If you actually go listen to everything I've said about females in racing, it's more so defending them. But as far as the Carson Elledge situation goes, yeah, everybody should be doing what they should for their own. Move up the levels of racing. I think that's a big problem. That's exactly what I'm trying to point out with the Carson Elledge situation. She ain't here to be a full-time outlaw racer. She's here to use it going up through the levels. I guess that's what most people are doing now, which is the biggest disrespect to dirt track racing that we could ever get, living on a sub-step level.
But it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter. I mean, If you had the opportunity, Chaz, to move from a asphalt late model or a sprint car, so to speak, let's say you run the World of Outlaws and you're one hell of a race car driver and you're talented, or you've got a sponsor that's got money, you're going to tell me that if the opportunity came for you to drive for Hendrick Motorsports or for Joe Gibbs or Stuart Haas or any of them, that you would not drive in NASCAR?
Well, I think that's the bigger issue that I was getting to is not only is dirt being a stepping stone, but that's the problem. The system is the issue. And if you want to talk about getting rides in NASCAR, I think that's also the bigger issue here with Carson Elledge. I mean, Tony Stewart kind of tapped on it. I mean, if you don't think Carson Elledge slides under the ladder of having rich parents or knowing people, I don't know where you think that's even plausible that she doesn't have that going for.
I got you. Okay.
the direct connection there with TMC is a direct connection with the Michael Annett, Harold Annett, Dale Earnhardt Jr., coup elitist group there, whatever you want to call it, that's going to get her wherever she's going to go. And it's not going to be necessarily on talent. I mean, you got girls up in there like Maria Kofer, Holly Shelton, Holly Holland, Michelle Decker. Decker's a little older, but these are girls that outperform her on the same racetrack in the same events.